I made these two kindling boxes or kindling crates to replace my old plastic one that I was using. It's kind of gone a bit cracked and a bit full of holes. So I decided to build two replacement crates so that I could be filling one while the other one's inside, and then I can just switch them out with replacements. So this one here is made of pallet wood and this one here is made out of pine scraps. And the first process was to plane this wood because it was in pretty rough shape. So I started by cutting it down and getting it to kind of like the rough lengths for the four sides, and then I glued it together at that stage. I had the dimensions I kind of wanted to work off. It was something similar to this plastic one. It's kind of close in height and length. It was pretty close there like that. So I just glued up the parts, and then I put them onto the bench, and I kind of built a little block system to kind of keep them in place. And I planed them with a very poor Stanley Handyman plane. It was blunt, it was hard to adjust. But I got through it. I took a few lumps out of the wood, probably because it was a dull blade, but also because the grain direction's kind of going. You can see some dinks here where it just tore out when I was planing it. I didn't really mind a bit of character to the boxes. So I belt sanded both of these down, and then I cut them all to their final sizes and final lengths. I decided to put a rebate joint at the ends, if you can see that, or a rabbet joint as it is also known as. And the reason why I did a rabbet joint was so that I could put the bottom into a groove along the bottom, and the rebate joint hides where the table saw cuts the groove out. So you kind of get a nice kind of finish here. And it's also stronger as well because there's more surface area rather than just like butting the two bits together. So if I had just butted this piece up against this side here, there'd only be glue on the end grain of this piece and butting up against the side grain of this. But because there is this rebate cut into it here, you get glue on two surfaces. Now before I assembled the box, I decided that you see a lot of crates online. I watch a lot of YouTube videos where people are building crates, and they all do the kind of classic handle hold where it's a hole, usually like two larger holes joined up with a jigsaw to kind of create a handhold. But I didn't want to do that because when I have this packed full of timber like this here, there isn't really much room to put your fingers in. So what I decided to do instead was a kind of handle that I saw somewhere in a video. I saw a crate that had the same kind of handle, and I thought it was really cool. So I thought a long time about how I was going to pull it off. I could have done it with the table saw, but that would have involved setting my sled up and having a jig in place, so then I would be dropping this side onto a spinning blade. It probably would have been safe enough, but at the same time it didn't make me feel incredibly safe, so I decided not to do that. The circular saw I have, which is what I used in the end, I just figured out where the saw had to be in relation to everything else, so that I could put a stop block and then put the piece of wood up to it and then just drop the saw and plunge it a few times and then clear it out. This worked pretty well. Like, it's actually really usable as a handle. I had to sand a little bit, still rough on the inside because the groove of the saw teeth kind of left a rough surface, but I sanded it as much as I could go and then got bored, so I think it works fine. And then I eased over the edges here with a bit of sandpaper as well. And as I said, it actually works really well as handles go, and I just think it looks really good as well. I think I'll definitely be using it again, and you can see from the footage where it was quite quick to do. I'd say maybe 20 minutes I did all four of the handles, 2 in each box, so that kind of worked out well. So once the handles were cut and sanded and all the edges were rounded over, I gave everything a quick sand while they were flat, and then I assembled it with glue and with 50mm nails through the pneumatic nailer, 2-inch nails. once the glue was dry in these two boxes, I found that the upper surface here, it was still kind of big and chunky, and it kind of seemed a little bit inelegant. And as well as that, when you were carrying it around, the sharp edges actually were kind of rubbing off your thumbs when you were carrying it. So using my router again, I just used like a 45-degree chamfer bit, and I just ran it around. The router bit had a guide bearing, so I was able to run it around the top. You can see in the video where I had some timber clamped to it to give me a wider surface for the bed of the router. It worked out quite well, and it does kind of soften. It doesn't seem so chunky now that there is just that kind of like little bit of a detail around the edge. As I said, it makes it easier to hold as well. I decided to put some feet on them. So you can see here I've got some little hardwood feet, just to kind of keep them off the ground, and kind of keeps a nice kind of like a shadow line underneath them. I just chopped up a piece of scrap hardwood that I had into little blocks. Used the belt sander to kind of round over the edges, and then I just glued them on. The added bonus to the feet is that they now stack. So now they kind of stack like that. They're cut to the same dimensions, but the two different types of wood are of a different thickness. And I don't have a thickness planer. I obviously don't, that's why I was hand planing them, but I don't have a thickness planer, so they're slightly different in size by a few mils, but they still stack, which is great when I need to store them. So when I had the boxes assembled and the glue was dried, I went on to my favourite part, and I think this is where I lost some footage. So the stencils on the front are cut out using a vinyl plotter, and I just use some standard vinyl. I don't use any masking vinyl, I just use regular vinyl. And I cut out the stencils, and then I weed out the excess, and I put the stencils on top of this, and then get ready to spray them. Now the one issue I had with these stencils were I used a different vinyl than what I would normally use, and this gave me some issues when it came to pulling off the excess vinyl. The best way of getting sharp graphics like I did on these two boxes is you put your stencil on first, and then you spray the stencil with either a colour or a clear varnish. The colour, if say these boxes were painted, I'd spray it with whatever colour these were painted or as close as I could get. Or in the case of these, as they're natural wood, I spray them with like a satin varnish. Hit it with the hairdryer just to kind of dry that off pretty quickly. And what that does is it seals the edges of the stencil. And this will stop when you spray it with your black or your finish colour paint. There's a very microscopic bleed of paint. So spraying with something like the clear varnish beforehand kind of seals up all those gaps and edges, those little tiny gaps that you wouldn't normally see. So when you do spray it with the final colour, you don't get that bleed, and you get nice sharp graphics. I use this matte car paint from my local German supermarket, and I think this must be some sort of lacquer. But what happened was when I sprayed this, it formed like a flaky shell on the vinyl, and when I was peeling off the excess vinyl, all little flakes of the paint started adhering to the surface, and I had to take some white spirits and kind of rub them down, and constantly be rubbing them with a white spirit rag just to get off the excess paint. It wasn't really sticking, but it wasn't coming off easily. I couldn't brush it away, it was actually like sticking to it. I like spray painting stuff with graphics because why not? It's the fun part of doing it. I always come up with these kind of goofy names just for the fun of it, but they turned out pretty well. And then to finish them off, what I did was I used a water-based varnish. I thought it was polyurethane, I thought it was a water-based polyurethane, but I'm not actually sure. Kind of smelled a bit like an acrylic. So these are my two kindling boxes. Thanks for watching. It'd be great if you could subscribe, and if you could like the video, that would be cool too. And I'll hopefully have a new video sooner rather than later. Thanks.